Alright guys and girls, this is a long playing review for After the War on the Amstrad CPC, released by Dinamic Software in 1989. And as many of you know, Dinamic are a Spanish software company, and After the War is one of a rare few of their games that was actually released by themselves in the UK, and also with an English language translation. And yeah, that is some striking box art there. I love it. As an 80s kid, that's going to get your attention. And again, we have another game inspired by John Carpenter's Escape from New York movie. We can see a fallen Statue of Liberty in the background there, for example. And of course, we have an obligatory ED209 from RoboCop ripoff there too, just thrown in. Marvellous. Anyway, this game is well known in Amstrad circles for its huge sprites and having two different gameplay types which are loaded separately. The first is a scrolling beat 'em up, then we have an impressive run and gun game which you can access with a password code you get on completing the first section. Anyway, let's start this up. Now, as I said earlier, there are two parts to this game, so you get a little menu when you load up. Of course, we're choosing part one, and we get a nice intro sequence coming now. Here it is. Dinamic presents After the War. And there you go. Nice little animated intro there. Only a short thing, but that impresses me a lot. I love when coders and graphics artists and stuff go the extra mile in terms of presentation. It makes a big difference with me, and it sets a good tone for the start of this game. So it's already got my attention, and I'm already like, ooh, I'm expecting good things here. Anyway, as the music plays out in full, I'll give you the story for the game. Anyway, here we go. I think it's appropriate on this title screen. So, the year is 2019, that's 2 years ago, and it is Manhattan after a nuclear war. From the ashes rises a hero, Jonathan Rogers, better known as Jungle Rogers. Yes, really. Master of the asphalt jungle. His only chance of survival is by reaching the XV-238 launching platform located at the headquarters of Professor Mcgilvray, a schizophrenic murderer, and then escaping to the outer colonies. It won't be easy getting there. He has to cross the dangerous streets of Manhattan, plagued with hapless survivors who in their desperate situation have become thieves and cannibals. And afterwards, he'll have to face guardians of Mcgilvray's scientific complex. And there you go. That is the story of a game taken directly from the manual. And given it's a Spanish-made game, the English and grammar isn't too bad there. So well done, Dinamic, and whoever wrote that. Even so, it's a pretty ridiculous story. And yeah, I think that's the end of the music here. And I think it repeats. Yeah, so we'll just move on here and get to the title screen, which is a little disappointing. And you can just select a joystick there, and it asks you to select which buttons for punch and kick. So there are separate buttons in this for punching and kicking, and I've had problems in emulators with the second fire button on my joystick not working, because I want to use the first button as punch and second button as kick, but in the end I just resorted to using keyboard. It might have been just WinApe emulator. Anyway, off we go, and as you can see, we've got a side-on scrolling beat 'em up with some absolutely huge sprites, well, for an 8-bit computer, and lovely colourful graphics there. We've also got a mode split going on, so the top so we've got a split in half vertically. So the top half is in mode 0. Was that split horizontally? I always get that mixed up. Anyway, there's a split across the middle of the screen, and the top half is mode 0. So the full 16 colour mode, big chunky mode 0 pixels, lovely. And in the bottom half for the heads up display, which is very nicely designed, that's in mode 1. So that's 4 colours, but smaller pixels and higher resolution. So very nice. They've done a mode split there. And we're up against the first boss already. It's quite a short game. So the first enemies we were fighting there, they're called, according to the manual, the Radio Gladiators. I think they meant to say radioactive gladiators. And there's a fallen Statue of Liberty in the background there. Escape from New York, hurrah. The bad guy we were facing there, the big, huge guy, he's called the Rad Bulls. Rad Bulls, apparently. And the guy that attacked me from behind there, the manual calls them the Manhattan Punkies. And if he gets up behind you, he'll basically just grab you and keep punching you in the lower back repeatedly. There you go. The best way to defeat them is with a back elbow, but whilst ducking. Sometimes the controls aren't exactly responsive. Every now and again, there'll be a problem with them. And then they appear with guns later on. The best way is to be ducking and then do the elbow move, which is fire and back. Because for some reason, you're able to pull off the elbow more consistently whilst ducked. So that's a top tip from me there. There's 3 sort of phases or sections to this first level. So we're on section 2 here. And we will have a Rad Bull to fight at the end of each one, and they get progressively more aggressive, as do the Radio Gladiators. Right, you've got a time limit ticking down there. That's basically how long you can survive the radiation outside before turning into one of those mutant cannibals we're fighting or whatever. But yeah, we've actually got quite a large range of moves here. I think I counted about 15 different moves you can pull off in total, including walking backwards and forwards and ducking. But 15 moves is pretty, is not bad going, even though the combat is still pretty limited. You just resort to kicks from range and punches when up close, and of course the elbow move. Here we go. Second boss. So you've got to attack his head with high kicks. So what I do is normally like a high kick and then jump backwards out the way, because then he might just suddenly lunge in at you. Also, he might be able to grab you at times and drain half your energy. And at no point during the game do you ever get any energy restores. So apart from when you load up the second section, which is an entirely different game. So you got to be very, very careful. I'm playing this relatively cautiously so far. I'm going to try and do this without taking any hit if I can. But the top tip here is to just move along bit by bit, because if you move a lot, if you scroll the screen too much, then more and more enemies will spawn. It's like RoboCop. Enemies will spawn when you've moved the screen and arrived at a certain point in the level. So if you just move like basically millimeter by millimeter, you may just be lucky to spawn just one enemy rather than 3 enemies at a time. So inch your way bit by bit across the game, which is a bit boring because you want to sort of like run and rush it and go in all guns blazing, or all feet blazing here rather. But the key to beating this game is take it cautiously and patiently. See, I moved on too far there, and I could have just taken on the guy on the right, but I moved on too far there, and the punk behind me spawned. Caused me a bit of difficulty with the gun. He's not consistent with how he fires his shots from his gun either. They can be quite random. Sometimes they come out quite quickly. Sometimes he shoots his bullets quite slowly. So watch out for that. That can catch you out. So just be, again, extra cautious. And watch out for the dynamite being thrown at you. If you get hit by the dynamite exploding, it's an instant life loss and death. Back to the start of the phase, as the game calls it. We do have a lot to talk about, actually. With not much time. We're going to be coming up to the boss here shortly, actually. Yeah, so I'll quickly talk about the coders. Coding for this game was done by a guy called Enrique Cervera, if I can pronounce that right. His only other credited game on the Amstrad was Dustin a few years earlier, which is extremely popular in Spain. I'm sure he had his hand in other CPC games, given how good both were, but I can't find any other credits for him. The excellent graphics. Two guys responsible for this. First guy, George Aspiri. Again, I might be pronouncing this wrong. He was responsible for the graphics in Navy Moves a year earlier, but sadly not much else. The other guy was Ignacio Ruiz Tejedor, also known as Snatcho. Again, apologies for getting the name pronunciation wrong. And he has done lots of graphical work on games over the years. He's known for doing the graphics on Satan, Game Over, Narco Police, Mitchell Football Master, Camelot Warriors, Rocky, and many more. Some really, really good graphics actually there. And the music on the loading screen is credited to someone called Mac, spelled M-A-C, although I can't find anything else about them. All right, here we go. Here's the last boss on this section. This guy is really, really tough and often beats me. You just got to keep your distance as best you can and get as many of those high kicks in as possible. He often wrecks me very often, so it's very frustrating getting this long play done and making this look easier than it is. Trust me, this is extremely difficult and hard. And we get the access code at the end of this level. There you go, 94656981. And what you have to do now, unfortunately, is reset your Amstrad and load up the game again, because it just takes you back to the title screen and doesn't load it up. So we're resetting here and loading up the second section. There we go. We'll talk quickly as we actually no, we're best. I want to talk about other versions of this game. So we still get the same loading intro here. I'll talk about it in bits, because I'll get interrupted because I need to talk about what's happening in the game. But other versions of this game, so this appeared on the ZX Spectrum, and that is basically the Amstrad version but in monochrome, and it suffers for not having as nice graphics. However, it appears to play ever so slightly faster. Oh, this is where you enter the access code. Quite difficult to read that actually, but it's hardly noticeable, the speed difference. But yes, definitely sharing some code for the CPC version, and it even has the same access code we're entering here, as does the Commodore 64 version. It has smoother scrolling compared to the Amstrad and Specky, but the graphics are nowhere near as good, although still decent. But in the first phase, your character can't jump at all in the beat-em-up section or do any flying kicks, meaning the bosses are easier in that first section. So a little bit disappointing, the Commodore one. Oh, let's talk about the second level here before we get to other versions. And here we go. This is the scrolling run and gun game. And we have a belt-fed machine gun. Woohoo! With unlimited ammunition as well. Waha! Okay, so the key thing here is to get used to the crouch. Whilst crouched down and pushing left or right, you can't get hit or take any damage. Apart from some giant robots later on that move that can tread on you and of course crush and kill you. Now the robots zooming around the screen there are called the flying rats, who drop atomic mines, as you can see that there. They sort of home in on you a bit, and their explosion goes up and down. They are one-hit deaths, so you've got to avoid them at all costs. So generally, with these flying rats, robots, is I try and get a few hits in, duck, shoot again, duck. And so you're alternating between ducking and shooting, basically. And then you've got the turrets to shoot there. And then later on, in later sections, we get some new enemies. So we were talking about other versions of this game. So this also appeared on the MSX, but it's the Specky version, of course, but at a much lower frame rate. So a dirty Specky port, no surprise there. But interestingly, instead of the actually no, I'm going to give away the ending. There's a crap ending sequence, unfortunately, and the MSX version is even worse. It just simply tells you game over. Anyway, moving on to the 16 bits. This also appeared on the PC DOS. and we'll start with that version first, because unbelievably the PC version is a ZX Spectrum version, but they're actually using emulator code to emulate the Speccy on the PC, believe it or not, and as such it runs even slower than the MSX version. It's quite appalling, really, they did that. Now, the I think we're going to have a boss battle here. Yeah. So the first boss battle, he's really, really easy. Get up really close, duck down, and as you can see, they can't hit you. Remain ducked, and angle your gun up and just blast away. And you see there's an inner power meter for him going down there. So it's nice that the bigger enemies in this game get a power meter in this second section. You also still have a time limit counting down there. If you look to the far left, it says 2:1. Just move to 2:0. So it's 2 minutes left. It's actually quite a tight time limit, so you do have to shift here. All right, we're going to move as well. We'll just talk about the 16-bit versions. We have Atari ST and Amiga. We'll start with the Atari. The ST has a slightly different look to it, with a much bigger screen, and you deal with rabid rats and dogs, although it doesn't feel as post-apocalyptic as the 8-bit versions in terms of the graphics. There are now weapons in the beat-em-up section you can pick up, like chains, and there's also pistols too, with a limited number of bullets. It's got some digitised sound effects, which are quite nice. And of course it has both sections. We've got the beat 'em up and then the shoot 'em up we'll play here. But both their designs and layout is very different to the 8-bit versions and the Amstrad one we're seeing here. The Commodore Amiga, we might as well move on to the Amiga here to finish off our 16-bit summary, which is an Atari ST port yet again, but the digitised sound effects are much better. Both 16-bit versions are okay for the technology, but they're nothing to write home about, really. The game ends with a battle against a tank. Oh, that's an android we're shooting there, by the way. Apparently called the Guardian MWN. So yeah, in the Amiga version, the final boss is a giant tank. And as for the ending, it has a text screen, but tells us that the next game is AMC Astro Marine Corps. Well, there you go. I never knew AMC was a sequel to After the War, which is a bit odd, seeing as that AMC is set on a completely different planet and you're fighting aliens. So, yeah, whatever. But lastly, apparently, there was also an arcade coin-op for After the War. And there was one developed for that. According to Wikipedia, that ever-reliable source, this was mentioned in a few magazines back in the day about the coin-op existing, but it was never released outside of Spain. But I can't find any pictures or any information about it anywhere at the moment. Oh, this is called the Mega Kangaroo we're fighting here, by the way. So you want to destroy the gun firing rockets in the middle there, just done that, and then go for the guy on the top of the Mega Kangaroo, as the manual calls it there, and then take him out. You can see the power level for the Kangaroo dropping down there. So yeah, I can't find anything about the arcade coin-op. If anyone comes forward with any information, I'll post a comment and pin it in the on the video. Although apparently a machine did exist which could be played for many years as we drop down in the lift into the Professor McGerrin's scientific base here, and we get more of the Kangaroos but smaller versions. Just duck and shoot, duck and shoot, duck and shoot really quickly. Aim for the guy and his head at the top of the Kangaroo, but don't get trampled by it. But yes, as I was saying, apparently there was an arcade machine for this existing in an amusement park called the Parc de Atracciones de Madrid. And reports said it was identical to the 16-bit versions. It sounds very much like the Arcadia system that Mastertronic developed to get their games into arcades. That was basically a stripped-down Amiga inside an arcade cab. There you go. This is possibly technically an arcade version, or maybe the arcade version got developed later. Who knows? Oh yes, actually, there is actually one final version of After the War. Finally, After the War emerged again in 2011 from a company called FX Interactive, who consisted of some of Dynamic's founding members. Really though, that was just an existing game released 3 years earlier called Collapse, a generic third-person hack and slash and shoot game. It's just been rebranded as After the War for the Spanish market and to capitalise on your nostalgia, which is a bit naughty really. And there you go, that's all the versions. Oh, another kangaroo to fight here. Magazine review very quickly. After the War was reviewed in Amstrad Action Magazine's issue 52 in January 1990, and they did indeed quite like it, calling it a plodding orgy of death. Their main criticism was, unsurprisingly, its difficulty level. But then, as we've seen here, it's a fairly short game, as we're very, very nearly completed it. They rated the graphics at 92%, Sonics 45%, grab factor 62%, stain power 88%, with an overall AA rating of 81%. And the final comment of explosive, violent fun. Oh, and it also got awarded the AA Rave Award too. So yeah, they quite liked it. And I quite like this too. I think we're coming to the final boss any second. I think I'm going to give this game, guys, an 8.5 out of 10. Getting those large sprites moving and looking as good as they are here on the Amstrad is quite the technical achievement. Not easy to do, and it looks great with an awesome Escape from New York vibe and atmosphere to it. We never got an official game of the movie as far as I'm aware, definitely not on the Amstrad, and it's one of my fave movies. I love a bit of John Carpenter, so this will indeed do. And we've got 2 games in one here as well. So that's really good value for money. All right, the final boss here. This guy is an absolute swine. I've got one tiny bit of energy left. You want to keep your distance because the rockets... and don't shoot whilst the rockets are come out the robot. Otherwise, they explode almost immediately on your head. You have to try and keep a distance, and you'll notice that if you get the right position, the bullets from the guy on the top of the robot just like go through your head. There, see? And we nearly got him. That is a really difficult boss fight, and we've finally done it. There you go. So what's our ending sequence? Let's have a look. To be continued. That's it. Oh dear. Well, there you go. What a disappointing ending to a actually really good game, actually. Yeah, so yeah, we get 2 games in one here, guys. A scrolling beat 'em up, then a scrolling shoot 'em up, well, run and gun. Whilst it's short in length, this game is no pushover, and it was agonisingly difficult for me to beat. Whilst especially the first section is maybe over simple, its appeal will fade quickly, but the second section is much better, and I did still like this one. Nice presentation on the loading there too, just a real shame about what a crap ending it was. And maybe we could have done with a third section, like maybe he steals some kind of rocket ship or something and he flies off, and you just have a quick sort of vertically scrolling shoot 'em up. That would have tied things off very, very nicely, and that would have made this an easily a 9 out of 10 plus game. But as it stands, I think 8.5 out of 10 may be a little bit generous, but I think there's enough there to warrant that. So let me know in the comments below what you think you would rate this game out of 10, or give it a percentage score. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye.
So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please click a like below, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. And over that way, there's another video for you to check out. Zypho, out.